Hey everybody, welcome back to Pay to Travel, the UGC podcast. We have a really awesome guest today, Catina. I have met her before, worked with her before when my friend Brie and I hosted a UGC and influencer retreat, I guess 2 years ago now. That's crazy. Was that 2 years ago? Or was it 1
It's a
year
year
ago?
ago.
Okay, it was one. I was like,
Yep,
no
1
way,
year.
it's been 2 years. Okay, a year ago, we hosted a retreat in Bend, Oregon. It was amazing. It was like an in-person 6-day retreat, and Catina came as a guest speaker, and she did a whole session on creator finances and taxes, and like everybody just had so many questions for her, and it was such a great presentation. And I was like, we need to have you on the podcast for a little like mini episode on all things creator finances and taxes. So, Catina, I'm so happy you're here. Hi.
I'm glad to be here.
Can you give us a quick intro on who you are, what you do?
Okay, I am Catina Borgman. I have a business called Gypsy Wander, where I help other women who want to get into van life but don't see a way forward get there. And so I have that, but then gosh, it's been almost 18 years. Oh gosh, it'll be 20 years in 2026. So longer than I think. I've been a tax professional. I'm an enrolled agent, which is the highest level of certification you can get from the IRS. And I love taxes, but I also love the freedom of travel. So I like to be able to put that tax and finance piece in with um with what I'm doing with Gypsy Wonder. So it's great to be here.
I love that. Also, did you know that my birthday is on tax day? Have I ever told you that? Yeah,
I
April
did not
15th.
know that. Now I will never forget.
I know. How could you? Yeah, and we have so many people who listen to the pod who are either doing van life or interested in van life. So definitely go give Katina a follow. Go check out her stuff. She's the best. Okay, amazing. Literally, this episode, I'm gonna kind of just shoot questions at Katina, and these are a lot of questions that students asked at the retreat that I know a lot of you have. Also, questions that maybe some of you have DM'd me over time that I know that a lot of people wonder about. So let's jump into it. So, very first question, I think this is just a very basic question that a lot of people wonder is how do I determine if I am a sole proprietor, an LLC, or another business entity? Like, how am I identifying and filing if I am a content creator?
Okay, so the most basic type of business you can have is just a sole proprietorship. And that's just you saying, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to start you doing UGC, and that's all there is to it. And you're a sole proprietor. It's basically you and the business are one. So you file your taxes. You don't have a separate business tax return to file. You're filing it with your personal tax return, and you are filing it with a Schedule C. So all your income and expenses that are attributed to the business are going on the Schedule C. You'll have your net profit or loss, and then that is part of your income. If you also have W-2 income or other income, that's just rolled right in there. And so that's just kind of automatic. You don't have to do anything other than say you are a business. A lot of times people say, but I'm not a business. I just do this. I just do this, but I'm not set up a business. You don't have to do anything formal. You don't have to do anything regularly and consistently. It could be something you just did a couple times during the year. You still are considered self-employed, and so you're filing that Schedule C, paying self-employment tax, and that kind of thing. You can also be an entity type of an LLC, which that is not a tax entity, that is a legal entity. So as far as taxes, if you become an LLC, unless you make an election to be taxed differently, you are still considered a sole proprietor. And so you're still doing everything just the same, even though you are an LLC. LLCs, where those come into play, is if you want to be taxed as a corporation, if you're consistently making a high level of income, that may be something you want to look into. Another thing is people think I have to have an LLC to be a real business, and you do not. Again, that is a legal entity, and that is a limited liability company. So it's dividing up your personal assets and your business assets, and then your personal assets are safe from any liability of the business. But there are many things that you have to do as an LLC that just setting up an LLC alone is not going to protect you. And there's all kinds of different caveats as far as when you want to become an LLC, why you wouldn't want to be. People a lot of times set up an LLC and think, oh, I want this because I want to be protected, but they're not doing any of the things that actually protect them. And so having the LLC didn't matter because they're commingling their funds or they're doing different things that don't keep the business and the person separate.
I was definitely guilty of that for a while. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I like set up an LLC. This is for another business. And I just like, yeah, it was so confusing to me. I didn't really know what I was doing. And honestly, I have always filed as a sole proprietor for my UGC business. And it's always been like really easy. I think people kind of complicate it and they're like, it feels so scary and complicated. And I don't know. It's always not been that difficult, and I've been a freelancer for a while, so even before UGC, I did freelance work, and so I think just filing that way is kind of second nature to me. But guys, if you're listening to this and you're like, "Wow, she just said so many words I don't understand," like truly, it's not that hard, and once you like do it once or just kind of look into it, you're like, "Oh, okay, that's what this form is. Got it. Okay, I can do that. Not so hard."
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that will, a lot of different companies that will help people become an LLC, and they really don't explain, um, there it's a process that they can charge lots of money for,
Mhm.
and they're not interested in if you are doing things the way you should, and they're going to say, yeah, you need to be an LLC because you're paying them to set that up for you, and so it's really important to make sure you're talking with somebody you trust that understands your situation and can advise you on that.
Yeah, very true. So my next question on the list, I feel like maybe you kind of already covered, but it was how do I file taxes as a content creator?
Yeah, yeah. And that is a big question. A lot of people will say, "No, I just don't have a business. I did this thing, UGC, and I just got paid once, but I really haven't done it much. I just started doing this in October. I've gotten paid a few times, and I'm really not a business."
Right.
But in the IRS's eyes, you are a business because you have a company paying you for a service, and no taxes were taken out of that. So you have a gross income from activity that is business related, and you have to pay self-employment tax and income tax on that. So that is a lot of times people think, no, I'm not a business. I just until they get these forms and they wonder, what are
Mhm.
these forms? And they try to put them in a tax software and it's telling them they are a business. And they're like, no.
You're like, "No, you are." Yeah, that's so true. So, isn't it like you don't have to file if you make less than a certain threshold? It's like, what, like $500 or something like that?
$400.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
you don't have income of more than $400, so not, if companies that you work for are required to provide you a 1099 NEC, which is non-employment compensation, if they pay you $600 or more.
Mhm.
If you don't receive a form for your income, it doesn't mean that it's not reportable. So if you get paid $500 from somebody, um, that is still income, even though you're not going to get a 1099 NEC on that. But if you have less than $400 income, you are not required to file a Schedule C for self employment.
Mhm. And that's total income, not like per job, right?
per activity, so per
Okay.
business.
Okay. Yes.
So, yeah, not yeah,
So if you're
yeah.
making more than $400 a year as a UGC creator, you better be filing.
Yes.
Love that. And I've actually gotten this question quite a bit, but so is it normal for a brand that I'm working with to ask for a form like a W-9? Why are they asking for that, etc.?
Yes, a W-9 is similar to a W-4 in that it is asking the relevant information that they're going to need to provide you with a 1099 NEC. And on that form, it will ask if you are a sole proprietor or an LLC or an S corp or a C corp. And generally, you are, even if you are an LLC, you are still a sole proprietor unless you've elected to be taxed as an S corporation. And that's very normal. A lot of people kind of get nervous about that. They will often ask for that up front because it can be hard to get that form if they've already paid you and they are, their requirement is to provide you this form. So usually right off the bat, companies will ask for that.
Yeah. Are there any other forms that you
And
think
you're
a
not
company might
making
ask
any
for?
elections on there as far as withholdings. It's just your business information. So your name, address, social security number, or EIN number if you have one. But you're not making not elections like you would on a W-4.
Totally. Are there any other forms that you can think of that like a brand would send that they might want a creator to fill out?
No, not related to income or taxes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was trying to think. I'm like, are there any other typical forms that brands send me? But I feel like W-9 is the common one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then, yeah, speaking of kind of withholdings, that's something we sort of have to do personally as a freelancer, as a creator, is you need to be setting aside money for taxes that is not automatically withheld or withdrawn. So, how do you do that as a content creator? How do you kind of set aside money for taxes? I would love just kind of a breakdown of, are there certain best practices involved with this in terms of how much should I be setting aside? Where should I be keeping that money? That sort of thing.
Yeah, it really depends on your total income. So if you have other businesses or other income other than your UGC, but you are going to pay 15.3% self-employment tax on that net income. And that's normally what is taken out of your paycheck if you receive a W-2. So that's your FICA taxes, your Social Security and Medicare taxes that automatically come out. Normally, the employer pays half of that and you pay half of it. But when you're self employed, you're paying all of it. So 15.3% is your self employment tax. Then you have income tax on top of that. So if you're in the 10% tax bracket, you're paying roughly, depending on your deductions and everything, 25% on that income. So I always recommend that people, when they get paid, they automatically take 25% of that. And it's hard. It feels like, oh my gosh, if you made $100, you're putting 25 of it into a savings account. And I would set up a savings account that you just get in the habit from the very beginning, taking 25%, putting it into a savings account and never touching that until tax time.
Yep.
Now, the first year that you file taxes, you're going to get a better idea on if that's the correct percentage. And you're also going to get an idea if you need to pay quarterly tax payments. So, depending on how much they give you kind of a leeway for the first year, but then after that first year, if you're above a certain percentage, you may be required to make quarterly tax payments. And but yeah, just start right from the beginning. Set up a savings account that you call your tax account, and when you deposit that $100 check, deposit 75 into your working account and then 25 into savings. And and don't touch that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
it's
no,
really hard
it
at
is
tax
hard.
time. Yeah, if you
Mhm.
haven't been setting that aside. And if you have and you've set aside too much, it's getting a tax refund,
Exactly. Yeah, it's just something you have to budget for as a business owner, as a UGC creator. It's yeah, as someone who has, like, made this mistake. Listen to me, if you don't set it aside enough and then tax season comes and you're like, "Oh my god, what did I just do?"
Yeah, yeah.
You will save
'Cause
yourself
it
a
adds
lot of
up, and
hassle.
it's usually a significant number that you don't just have extra laying around for, so
Yeah, I mean, it really can be a lot of money. Like, think about it from the perspective of, okay, let's say you made $50,000 from UGC and you have to pay 25% of that. Tax season comes around. If you haven't set money aside for that, that's gonna be like
$12,000.
13,000. Yeah, that's like $12,000 out of your pocket that you're like, shit, I don't have that money. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, it's scary. You gotta be doing that ahead of time because you don't wanna screw yourself over.
Hey there, travel UGC creator. Did you know that your best content ideas are already hidden in the content you've previously shared? That's right. Most of the time, we find ourselves scrambling for new content ideas when really we should just be looking at our analytics of what's worked well for our audience and rinse and repeat. I'm Laura, and I host the Travel Creator Podcast. And over there, we talk so much about making content creation sustainable and freaking easy because there's no BS here. We know that content creation can be really tough. So, the next time you are wondering what the heck to post, go back and look at your top performing posts. Go back and look at the top 10 and ask specific questions about who they were for, what they were answering, and why they performed well. You can also do this with new UGC clients you are pitching or new UGC video ideas. So, back to Maddie, but I'll see you over on the Travel Creator.
You talked a little bit about bank accounts. Do you recommend that people set up a separate business bank account for like receiving income and then setting aside money for their taxes?
I absolutely recommend having a separate business checking account. Now, when I say business checking account, when you're first starting out, you may not want to do a business checking account as far as what the banks will call it, just a personal bank account, because a lot of times business checking accounts are not free depending on what bank you go to. But absolutely, you do not want to commingle your money, your business money and your personal money. And that goes back to that liability. If you're not treating your business, as a separate business, pick a business that you can relate to and say, okay, if I worked here, is Best Buy going to pay my groceries? No. I'm going to pay it. So I'm going to pay it out of my personal account. Is Best Buy going to pay for my, I don't know, my Best Buy shirt? Yeah, maybe. So that would be out of your business account. So think of it in those terms, and it
Mm,
becomes easier to figure out. But so always from the very beginning, set up a separate account. And you can also do that with a credit card. If you're a lot of times when you're starting a business, you have some expenses up front. If you have a credit card, designate a personal credit card as that is your business card. Even though it says your name on it, it doesn't say the business. Same with your banking account. It doesn't necessarily say the name of the business, but it's a separate account that you only use for business.
mm.
Um, then yeah, keep that separate. And then also I setting up a savings account that you keep all of your tax money, your minimum of 25% in those two accounts, and then a credit card if you use one.
What expenses related to content creation? I'm thinking like tax deductible or like a write off. So, like, what expenses would you kind of group into the category of being a good write off for content creators? And if they're trying to figure out if something is a write off, like, how would they figure that out?
Okay. So business expenses have to be ordinary and necessary. So anything that you are using for your business, that really has a legitimate business use can be a write-off or an expense. So if you have an editing software that you use for your UGC videos, if you buy a certain camera, that's going to be an expense. If you buy have certain props that you only use for your videos. And you can use household items, but that is not an expense. If you're just using it for one video, that's not an expense. So it has to be something that is reasonable, ordinary, and necessary. It has to be something you paid for in the current year, directly related to your business. And again, reasonable. So not lavish or extravagant. You can't, the IRS will look for frivolous claims. And also some of the expenses that you don't always think of because they are business and personal expenses are your cell phone, your internet. Those are personal expenses. So you're paying that with your personal money. But when it comes tax time, you look at a percentage. So what percentage of your cell phone did you use for UGC? And if you're a full-time content creator and you're using your phone to film videos and make phone calls and that kind of thing, it could be a significant, it could be 50%, 75%, and then that percentage is a business expense. Same with internet, you're probably going to have internet regardless of if you're a UGC creator or not.
Right.
But what percentage do you use your internet for your business? You can also, in certain situations, it gets a little bit tricky if you're living van life and you're moving around, but some mileage can be deducted. And if you're meeting a client, like maybe you're meeting with somebody that you're potentially doing a UGC piece for, and you go to lunch, hopefully they pay for it, right? But if you pay for that or you take somebody to coffee to talk about UGC, that meal could potentially be deductible. But the primary purpose of those meals have to be for business reasons. So there's all kinds of rules and questions that go around those expenses, but mileage, cell phone, internet, and then any direct, like your editing software. What sort of expenses do you use, Maddie? What are some of the things that you use?
Yeah, things that I use and write off either fully or partially would be editing software, tripod. I have like a light ring that I use.
If you
I'm
pay
trying to-
somebody to edit your videos, that would be something you could write off.
Yeah. I have like a desk, like I have this office space. So I know for me, like living in an apartment, I can write off like the square footage of like my little office area of my apartment just because I only do
Yep.
work here. Mhm.
Yep. If you have a home office that you use regularly and exclusively for your business, yeah, that is something that you can definitely write off.
Mhm. I have a question for you actually. So I recently bought a bike off like Facebook Marketplace. It was like $75. And I bought it because a brand was like, we have this concept and you need to have a bike in it. And so like you need a bike basket, whatever. And I was like, okay, I'll just like go buy a bike because sure, I'll just have a bike. Because I was like, I could rent one, but honestly, it's gonna be like $30 anyway. And if I can just buy one
Yeah.
and have it, then okay. So would that be considered a write-off?
Were you going to use it personally?
Yes. After the video, for sure.
I would say no.
Okay.
I would, I always, when I'm making those judgments, and different tax professionals will give you different advice. And I always look at it from the position of, if I'm sitting in court talking with a tax judge, can I argue that? Can I say, no, this is a business expense because she wouldn't have gotten the bike had she not had this request from a UGC creator,
Yeah, a brand.
for a video. And yes, while that is true, the fact that you continued to use the bike personally, and if the bike only cost you $75, I wouldn't even say, okay, well, maybe it was 5% business. That would be really messy and not worth the paperwork, not worth the potential questioning that you could get.
Well, okay, so I feel like this one maybe makes more sense. So another brand, I had to do like a picnic setup for them. So I had to go and buy like a whole charcuterie thing, fruits. I had to buy things of certain colors. And it was just for that shoot. We pretty much just like either ate it or used it and then like threw some stuff away after that shoot. But it wasn't like something I was buying necessarily to personally enjoy. It wasn't a long term thing that I was using. So I would consider those purchases as a write off. Would you agree?
I would, because you purchased it specifically for your video, and you got rid of it, even if you kept it and kept it in a closet, but it's something you have never used
Mhm.
for its intended purpose. Yeah, that I would consider something that is deductible.
Yeah. And then you briefly touched on mileage. So, for example, let's say I have to shoot a um video for a hiking shoe brand. So I have to like go on this hike. I drive an hour to the hike, I drive an hour home, and it was for the purpose of shooting that content. Would that mileage be deductible?
Because you have a home office, yes. So you were leaving your office, driving an hour to create the video and driving an hour back. Now, if you did not have a home office and you worked from really wherever you were, no, you are considered transient
Mm.
as far as your work. And so that would not. Now, if you did not have a home office and you were considered transient as far as your work location, you worked from anywhere, and you drove from your home 10 minutes to a park and you shot a video, and then you drove an hour to your hiking location, and then you drove home. That trip from your house, because you don't have a home office, from that trip from your house to the park 10 minutes away is commuting. That mileage from the park to the hiking spot is business mileage. Now, if you would have made another stop on your way home that was business related, that would be business mileage. But if you from the hike went directly home, that's commuting.
Interesting. Huh.
So think of it as if you worked for, again, Best Buy, and you left home and drove to work, they're not going to pay you for that time. When you leave work and go home from Best Buy, they're not going to pay you from that time. But if you leave your house and go to Best Buy and then you work, and while you're at work, they say, "Hey, I need you to go get coffee. Will you go do that? And we'll reimburse your mileage," or whatever. Then yeah, you're using that mileage for a business purpose
Yep.
and not just commuting between your home and your business, wherever that location would be.
Okay. So interesting. All these things like income, expenses, mileage, all this. How do you suggest creators keep track of all of this throughout the year?
QuickBooks is something that I guess I think is the first thing that comes to most people's minds. But that may not be, because maybe that's just the first thing that comes to my mind is because they're very well known, and you can get QuickBooks software. But what I recommend, and I've used QuickBooks, and there's nothing wrong with QuickBooks other than it can get pretty spendy. I like WAVE accounting, and I can give you a affiliate code to put
Oh,
in your
perfect.
show notes. I use that for all of my Gypsy Wander business, and I've used them for several years now, and I love it. They have a free version, and then they do have some paid options, and you can actually choose an option where you can talk with an accountant. Like, you're not sure how to account for something, you can talk with somebody, online. They'll help you, and I really like that, because sometimes I just have a silly question and I don't
Mhm.
know who to call, you
Yeah.
know. Um, but that software, I think, really helps you manage, am I making any money? Or gosh, I am making a ton of money, I didn't realize. And it just is a nice way to keep everything in order. Um, and if you are not commingling your money, you only have one business checking account, a business savings, and maybe a credit card that you use only for business, it makes it so much easier that you can have everything fed right into there, and then you put it into different categories, like this was props for a shoot. This is the money I'm spending on editing or on software or what have you. And so it's really nice to be able to see where your money is going, what you're spending money on. Because once you see all that in print, you're like, wow, I didn't realize I was spending so much on whatever it may be.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, Wave. Yeah, well, we will drop that link that you have below so you guys can check out Wave. Oh, okay. This is a question. I know we've covered this before together, and I get asked all the time is I don't think people realize this, and it's a conversation that needs to be had more, but like explain the tax implications for gifts. So let's say we do a gifted collab with a brand, which means they're sending you product in exchange for content. So the brand isn't paying you, but let's say they're sending you a a pair of $150 hiking boots. Is there any tax implications on me for that?
Yes, there is. Good question. Because this is something that comes up a lot. And yes, that is if a brand is sending you even something to use in your video, whether you use it or not, that is income. And if they're paying you more than that $600, they will include the value of that gift within your 1099. Now, you are free to do with it whatever you want. You can, you can give it away. But regardless, that is income to you. Back in, I don't know, the 90s and 2000s, you used to go to a bank and open a checking account, and they would give you a toaster for $10. And you would get a 1099 for that because that was considered income.
Oh my God.
So a gift is really not a gift.
Yeah.
Now, if you were getting something, maybe you've worked with a brand and before, and they just send you a gift pack that says, hey, we really enjoy working with you. You've done great things, and we're just sending you this whatever as a thank you because you've been really great to work for. There is no expectation of anything in return. They're not sending you this in hopes that you're going to make a video about it. That is a gift. There were no strings attached to it. There was no expectation of, hey, she might make a video with this, or we want her to make a video with this. We're going to pay her to do a video with this. So yeah, gifts can be tricky.
Yeah. It's another annoyance as a creator because I think just so many people don't realize that. Like literally when you're accepting gifted collabs and things like this, like you have to pay taxes on that. And
Yeah.
what you're saying is you're basically just going to add so basically you would let's say you go to the website of those hiking boots, you find out what the retail price is, whatever that retail price is, that is just you're adding that to your quote unquote income for the year that is going to be taxed, right?
Right.
Yep.
Yep. So it's the same as if you received cash income.
Mm-hmm. And would this also apply to a hosted stay? So let's say I work with a hotel and I am creating content for them in exchange for 2 nights at their hotel and it's valued at $400. Am I then required to pay taxes on that $400 that the gifted stay is worth?
Yes. Yes. They gave you something in value. They gave you that value in return for a video. So yes, so they may pay you in cash, or they may pay you in product, or they may pay you in both, but that is taxable income.
Mm-hmm. And let's say it's the same scenario, but they are paying me. So let's say they're also paying me $1,000. Do I need to report just the $1,000 that they're paying me, or do I also need to report the stay? So $1,400.
You would report the $1,400, and likely they will send you a 1099 for $1,400. And so that will be confusing to people. They'll be like, no, they only paid me $1,000. They didn't pay me $1,400. but that is the $1,000 plus or the 400. And so what I suggest with gifts is, sometimes you don't anticipate that you're going to make over $600 with a certain company or a certain brand. And so I would keep a spreadsheet or a list or, a page in a notebook that said, this date I received, hiking boots valued at whatever. And then at the end of the year, go through when you're getting your 1099s and say, okay, this was already reported on a 1099 because they paid me $1,000 plus that stay, and I got a 1099 for 1,400. So I don't need to report that separately. That way you can determine you're not double reporting it. You're not reporting something that you're also getting a 1099 for.
Totally. For anyone who's listening to this and they're like, wait, but why am I paying taxes on the gifts that they're giving me? If they're just like, they don't understand the concept behind that, can you explain that a little bit of like, why is a creator paying taxes on a gifted stay or like a pair of boots that I'm given?
Because it's similar to bartering.
Mhm.
And bartering income is taxable. So if I had a big brand for my tax business and I said, Maddie, I want you to make me a piece of content, a piece of UGC content that I can use for my tax business. And I'm going to do your taxes for free. That is bartering. And generally nothing ever happens with that because that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And people don't report it because they don't think it's reported. But when you're working with brands and they're, having to do their taxes and their accounting and dot all their I's and cross all their T's, you really don't want to hope that that's not being reported somewhere that could be tracked back. And so in our case, I would have the income, which would be the value that I would have received from you in cash if I filed your taxes for you. And I'm going to have an expense of the UGC, whatever you would have charged me. So it's still a transaction where there was value given for an item. And so same with gifts. They may say it's free because they're not paying you cash money for it, but they're giving you this these $75 boots, and they have an expectation that you are going to make a video. Maybe you don't, but they still gave you $75 worth of something. And you just didn't do anything to kind of pay them back for that or give them anything in return, but it's still value.
Mhm.
It's, um, same with when you open an account and you got a toaster oven. I didn't want the toaster oven, but it's something of value you received.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic. I just think a lot of people or a lot of creators don't know about that, so I always like to kind of hit on that.
And in most cases, even if you're making really, really good money doing UGC, we're still little fish in the pond. And there are a lot of times, no one really knows about it. Maybe people have been doing this for years and I've never reported that. Well, you just haven't gotten caught. And
Yeah.
my concern is the brands you're working for, they get audited and they're, somehow then checking. I would worry about, a big brand and it catching up with me years down the road. So sometimes it's insignificant enough that you just don't want it to come back and bite you in the butt.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, kind of final two questions here, but are there any other resources that we haven't really talked about, resources or tools that you recommend for creators in terms of managing their finances, taxes, etc.?
I like the IRS website, the Small Business Tax Center. So on irs.gov, they have a small business tax center that they actually do have some really good publications. I have a webinar on that's available on my website and my store that is about starting a new business. I touch some on UGC, but it's not specific to UGC. And it kind of goes through business entity, how you're tracking income and expenses, all of the ins and outs of how to determine if things are expenses. And so it's a pre-recorded webinar. I think it's about an hour long. And then I give you some handouts, some best practices for self-employment, and then like lists of expenses that you may have that just kind of gets your mind going in the direction of, oh, I wonder if this is an expense, if that's an expense. And so you get several handouts, and then the webinar, and that's in my store on my website, gypsywander.life.
Yeah, we'll link that below in the show notes as well, so you guys can check that out. The handouts, are those like same or similar handouts you gave at the retreat? Yeah, those were great.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, final question, because I think people might listen to this and be like, I'm so overwhelmed and I don't understand half of this. I don't know what I'm doing. And first of all, totally normal. Taxes and finances
Yes.
is like a whole
Yes.
world. Should people be hiring a tax professional or accountant? Is that a route they should go down? If so, how do they go about finding somebody to help them or answer questions that they have, etc.?
It really depends on the person and how willing you are to just jump in and figure it out. And you don't have to, but I definitely recommend at least consulting with somebody, especially if you just have some questions you need answered. That it's important to find a trusted professional. And there you can go on the IRS website and look for licensed professionals. There are a lot of tax professionals that come out of the woodwork during tax season, and then you can never find them again. And so I would definitely recommend making sure that it's somebody who has been around a while, a CPA or an enrolled agent. I'm an enrolled agent, but they don't necessarily have to have, they don't have to be credentialed to be reputable. But yeah, it's definitely possible. I also work for Intuit TurboTax during the tax season in the community. And some tax softwares are really good at explaining things. If you're checking the little question marks or the little links, they do a good job of explaining it. But you do sometimes have to search. You don't understand why the question is being asked and how your answer may affect your tax return. So it just depends on the person. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to know it. It's kind of like when I go to the mechanic, I'm like, I have no idea what you're doing and I don't want to know. I just want you to fix it.
Right.
And you're scared when you open your, because you don't know, but they're not. You give me your tax stuff, I'm not scared. I understand it. I know it. And so it's the same type of thing. If you're the kind of person that would go and open your hood and say, poke around and say, oh, figure out what this does, you could probably do it by yourself. But sometimes you never started UGC, so you could keep track of income and expenses and taxes. So if you don't like it, if you don't want to do it, definitely reach out to somebody and have somebody help you out.
Yeah, totally agree. And if someone did hire like a consultant for a session to just like answer their questions, get things clear, or if they hired an accountant or a tax professional to help them year round, is that a write-off for their business?
It certainly is. That is a ordinary and necessary business expense. And I offer, I don't know that I specifically say it on my website. I offer mentoring generally around van life and that kind of thing. But I do have one session mentoring session that we can talk about anything, and
Right.
that could be used for if you have business questions, tax questions, questions about your dog, whatever, so,
Yeah, that's great.
that definitely, I'm open to that. If you obviously am giving general information, but if I know your specific situation, I can be more specific and then also provide. I have so many resources and different things that can help.
Yeah,
I'm
I love
definitely open to
that.
that as well.
Yeah, especially I know a lot of people listening are like they do UGC and they also travel full time or they do van life and stuff like that. And so that's kind of a whole other game as well of like, how do I file? Where do I file? Like that is a whole thing. So I
Yep.
think you probably have a lot of wisdom on that as well. So that could be very helpful for people who are in that circumstance. Okay, wait. I had one other question that this is kind of on topic, kind of not. If you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But I get this question sometimes, and I was like, maybe you can speak on this. But can I still plan for retirement if I do not have an employer? And if so, how do I do that?
Yes, you can. You can. You are your employer. And so it depends on if there are different options based on if you're a sole proprietor, an LLC or sole proprietor, or if you're an S corporation. So you can always contribute to like a traditional IRA that you set up at a bank, but you do have other options. You can do a SEP IRA, which is a self-employed person IRA, different things when you are an S corporation, and that are very advantageous tax wise. So yes, you can definitely still set up different plans. And one thing also, if you have health insurance and you're maybe buying that through the marketplace, and if you don't have an employer that you're getting health insurance through, you can get a self-employed health insurance deduction. That's definitely another perk that you can take advantage of tax-wise.
Yep. I love that. Amazing. Oh, this was so insightful. So many like good topics. I feel like people are just going to be like, wow, I needed to know these things. If
Yeah,
people want
yeah.
to find you, connect with you, where can they do that?
I am on Facebook under Gypsy Wander, all one word, and Wander, not wonder. So
Mhm.
WANDER. I quit Instagram. My audience is just not on Instagram. And so I do the Facebook, I do YouTube, and I obviously have my website, gypsywander.life.
Beautiful. We will link all of those in the show notes. So if you just scroll down, you will find all of those links, all of the info. So you can go check her out, check out the webinar, check out her website, book a call with her if you want. Was there anything else, Catina, that you think that we missed or anything else that you wanted to say on any of these topics?
The only thing that we didn't really talk about was records, keeping receipts.
Yeah.
Um, Very important to keep receipts. And I have all kinds of ideas on how, to make that manageable that I'm willing to share with people. So yeah, definitely reach out to me. Even if you just send me an email, I reply to all my emails. So I could go on and on and on because I love taxes.
I love it. I
I
love
love
speaking to
taxes and van
someone who
life.
knows their shit. I'm like, you got it. You got this. You know this.
I'm a
I love
serial entrepreneur. I've
it.
had so many businesses over the years, and I don't know. A lot of people will say to me, "You don't seem like a tax person or an accountant," and I appreciate that comment because I don't think I'm boring and stuffy
Boring. Yeah.
and like many accountants.
Yeah. You're like, no, I live in a man. Like I have I have a whole life and tax is
Yeah.
not my life, but I do love it. And I know a lot about it.
Yes. Yes. It come tax season, I am just so pumped up for tax season. Now, get mid-April, I am so ready for it to be done because I
Uh-huh.
work like crazy during tax season with my own clients and then also working for Intuit TurboTax and that kind of thing. So I work a lot of hours during tax season.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Katina. It was so great to have you on the podcast. Again, you guys can check out all of her links and stuff in the show notes below. But thank you so much, Katina.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. Thanks for tuning in this week, you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode. If you want to become a UGC creator and get paid to travel, then my UGC Accelerator is for you. Fast track your UGC career with over 40 video trainings, live weekly Q&A calls, and direct access to me as your UGC coach. You'll get personalized feedback, accountability, and a proven 3-month roadmap to start getting paid UGC deals. Plus, an active community of over 100 other creators also on their UGC journeys. Some students have earned over $2,000 in UGC deals within weeks. And I have students like Lene, who quit her nannying job just 4 months after starting the program because of UGC. Or Katie, who's made over $12,000 in her first few months of pitching. Plus, there's a no-brainer guarantee. If you don't make back your investment in the program, I'll give you a full refund. So if you're ready to take UGC seriously, click the link in the description to learn more.